Today, we are going to be talking about how Andrew Carnegie's steel industry influenced America as a whole during the Gilded Age. We will be focusing on his societal, political, and economical impacts, which began during the 1870s in the Gilded Age and lasted until today. Andrew Carnegie was a very successful businessman who, as a child, lived in poverty. He was a secretary and telegraph operator at the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. He then became a superintendent at the railroad, and his income progressively increased. With this money, he ended up buying the Homestead Steel Works, where his business became a staple in America's Gilded Age, which was the period between the Civil War and World War I, when the U.S. population and economy rapidly grew, but a lot of corruption came with it. With all his fortune, he was able to influence the people around him. Andrew Carnegie was able to make donations to what he cared most about: education as well as international peace. He created the first library, the Carnegie Free Library, and after creating this, he created a total of 2,509 public libraries. With his passion for promoting education, he donated to schools and universities around the world. Overall, Carnegie helped society depend more on education and promoted it around the world so it could become accessible to everyone. International peace was also very important to Andrew Carnegie. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace was a non-profit organization formed in 1910 that dealt with national policies, civil society, economy, and businesses. On top of this, he was against the annexation of the Philippines, so he offered $20 million to President William McKinley for the independence of them. He conducted and paid for research to be done on the actual causes of war so we could prevent them from happening. He helped the Peace Palace in The Hague, which was an expensive library that contained books of international law. Andrew Carnegie helped stimulate international allies and peace in order to ordain a better life and world. Moving on, Carnegie helped influence society by writing books. One of his most influential books was The Gospel of Wealth, published in 1889, which stressed the idea that wealthy had a moral obligation to give to those in need and act as a leader or attendant of society. Lastly, Carnegie created the Carnegie Corporation of New York, in which he invested $125 million. He dedicated this corporation to the advancement and diffusion of knowledge and understanding. He was a big supporter of scientific philanthropy because he believed it would help our society in a long-term process. All of his corporations, nonprofit organizations, and funds share an underlying purpose to promote education and international peace. In total, Carnegie distributed $350 million to help the world around him and for future generations. In addition to influencing society, Andrew Carnegie also influenced politics. Carnegie, with his steel business, gained competition through the years. He would undercut his services at a lower price so consumers would buy more from his business. He brought light and electrical power to industries in America and also increased the number of jobs. With all his fortune, he was able to buy off politicians in order to try to get what he desired. He offered $20 million to President William McKinley in order for the Philippines to be independent. During his career, he built a relationship with Henry Frick because he believed no man will make a great leader who wants to do it all himself or get all the credit for doing it. He then turned more competitive, and Frick was dismissed from working for Carnegie. Lastly, Andrew was considered a robber baron of the Gilded Age. This is a person who has become rich through ruthless and unscrupulous business practices. Him, as well as other leaders, brought the idea of robber barons to America. Economically, Andrew Carnegie allowed the USA to thrive. He created many more jobs by building and modernizing the American industry. He increased labor by increasing the productivity in agriculture, mining, railroading, and manufacturing. As a result, he increased the wage of farmers and workers. Even after paying all the workers, Andrew Carnegie used his fortune and invested it in new equipment and methods for his steel industry. At times of recession, Carnegie developed his own tactic by lowering the prices of his products and expanding markets for steel products. Everything was fairly easy for Carnegie because the government followed a hands-off policy. This meant the government did not regulate any actions nor tax, so big industries were mostly allowed to do what they want. Andrew's most significant tactic for his business was vertical combination. He bought railroad companies and iron mines because if he owned both of these, he could reduce costs and produce cheaper steel. Sadly, he sold his company to J.P. Morgan in 1901 for $500 million, which resulted in him being the wealthiest man. Overall, we learned that Andrew Carnegie was passionate about education and international peace. He kept up his industry by competing with other politicians and also forming alliances with others to make his industry stronger. He was a powerful leader in the Gilded Age and led the USA to becoming the leading industrial power. These are all the sources we use for our project, including pictures, quotes, and information. I contributed to the script, slides, works cited page, and contribution page. Todd contributed to a small portion of the script, research, pictures, and works cited.